Hello, everyone, and thank you again for joining us at the 2024 Sloan Sports Analytics Conference. My name is Esteban Calderon, and I'm a first-year MBA student at MIT Sloan, and it is my pleasure to introduce our panel, Globalization of Soccer. Our panelists today are Scott Crace, Senior Member of Bold Ventures, Brian Bilello, President of the New England Revolution, Julie Ehrman, Co-founder and President of Angel City FC, and Matt Holsizer, Co-founder and Managing Partner at Pick Six Investments. Our panel will be moderated by Saj Cherian from Fanatics. The panel will run for 45 minutes, and we will leave 10 minutes at the end for questions. Please submit questions via our Cadence app. You can navigate to this panel via the scheduled pin in the menu and navigate to Globalization of Soccer event. Questions can be submitted in that event, and then will be selected by the moderator. Without further ado, I'll turn it over to you, Saj.
Welcome to the globalization of soccer. As the World Cup returns to America and Boston in just 2 years, let us explore some of the seismic shifts disrupting the global landscape of the sport. We're fortunate to have assembled some of the world's most prominent soccer club leaders, as they discuss the strategies that they are deploying in pursuit of supremacy within an increasingly global game. Brian, let's begin close at home with you, President of the New England Revolution. How did you get your start in the business of sports, and specifically soccer? Didn't it all start right here at MIT?
Yeah, interestingly enough, my first job in sports was a usher for the 1994 World Cup here in Boston. I was on campus at MIT. I was a soccer player, and they were recruiting people. Me and my friends answered the call. We went. We're like, "You're going to pay us to go to the World Cup games?" We thought that was amazing. And I think for people who, I'm 49 now, who aren't my age, don't realize how little soccer there was in the United States back then. And so for me to be able to come see world-class players, I was seeing players that weren't on TV. Like, soccer wasn't on TV even back then in the United States. We didn't have a league for the men or women in the United States back then. So for me, it's pretty interesting to think about the '94 World Cup, where we were as a soccer nation then, right, and where we are today. And then we've got the '26 World Cup coming. For the men, hopefully, knock on wood, Julie, we've got the '27 World Cup coming. For the women after that, we'll see. But from a soccer perspective, to think about no leagues for the men or women, no soccer on TV basically at all, to where we are today with, I think you can watch more soccer in the United States than frankly any country in the world with all the TV rights deals we have. We have a thriving MLS, we have a thriving women's league. It's pretty amazing to go. So when I think about my start in soccer, where I came from, where I am today, I'm actually chairing the board for Boston '26. So, for me, it's a dream come true to be involved with the World Cup coming back to Boston, because really the World Cup in '94 is how I got my start in sports.
Well, Scott, at Bold Ventures, you help pioneer multi-club ownership, managing stakes in, I think, 12 soccer clubs across the globe. Where did you get your start in soccer?
Well, first, thanks for everybody for being here. I just want to say this is my first MIT Sloan Analytics Conference, and I am just blown away. I would just commend Daryl, Jessica, and the whole staff, and I honestly just give them a shout out and applause, because I walked around today and I was truly blown away. So I am honored to be here, and really appreciate what you've put together. It's really special.
Yeah. Daryl?
So my start in soccer, there's not one specific thing. I wasn't an usher. Always loved sports, played sports. I was actually miscast in high school as a goalie, but they didn't really measure me right. I should have been a winger, but I had good hands. I was a shortstop on the baseball team, and back when you're young, if you can stop the ball with your hands. So I was a goalie, and I was cut from the varsity. So my soccer playing experience was very limited. Spent some time in London, fell in love with the game, and I'm just fortunate to be part of the Blitzer family's family office. And it was really David's vision to put together a multi-club, really a ecosystem of soccer clubs that we thought could all benefit from each other, but each one being special and having its own local community ties and local special connection for its culture and the respect and the support you need from that fan base, politically, et cetera. So David's vision, I'm lucky enough to have fell into that vision in 2021 when I joined the Blitzer family office at Bolt.
Great. Now, Julie, basketball was your sport.
It was.
So how did playing basketball get you into soccer?
Yeah, it's a great story. My journey with football really goes back to 2019 because I did not play growing up. I never kicked a soccer ball, but I grew up playing basketball and played in college. And we found this unique thing in LA that a lot of the women that were in tech and venture grew up playing basketball. So I have a good friend, Robin Ward, who runs Founders Forward, which is for entrepreneurs. And she started to create this summer basketball league of all of us women to create also an opportunity for networking and connections. And this is very much, in the same time as the Me Too movement and the Time's Up movement, where women were really starting to come together to support each other. If we want to get equal access and opportunity and visibility, we need to start helping each other and stop competing against each other. So she started creating this basketball league that was going on for maybe 8 years. Somehow I'd missed most of the games because they were always in the summer. But on August 19th of 2019, I went to the basketball game. It's 3-on-3. More people want to sit out and drink white wine than actually play, because when you get older, the elbows go and the blood comes. But Kara Nortman was there, and Kara Nortman is one of my co-founders at Angel City Football Club with the actress and activist Natalie Portman. Kara had just come back from the World Cup, was telling us all of her great stories about the experience, watching them win, spending time with the players, and there was a conversation on the court that led me to be co-founder and president of Angel City.
Matt, you entered sports ownership after a successful career as an investor. What drew you into sports ownership and ultimately owning several soccer teams?
I mean, I'd start with stupidity. Look, I'm a hockey player by background, and we had gotten involved in hockey because I wasn't good enough in hockey to play professionally, so I started crunching numbers and being kind of a hockey nerd, and ended up looking at NHL teams back during the financial crisis. And what happens is when you have money and there's a financial crisis, people knock on your door, including bankers, to pitch you soccer teams. And so we were shown a bunch of teams over in England where it looked like, and my day job is actually an options trader. So think, something may move up or may move down. So the idea of relegation and promotion was really sort of interesting, and started looking at a bunch of different teams back then. Ended up investing in a team called Bournemouth, they ended up getting promoted to the Premier League, which was very good. And then really enjoyed it. We ended up exiting that club for a bunch of different reasons. And then since then, we got involved in an Irish team, the Monaco women's team, and Wolverhampton Wanderers that we currently own. And we love it. It's very similar to hockey in many ways too.
So globalization is moving in two directions. Multi-team, multi-sport ownership groups have penetrated the top soccer leagues, with sports conglomerates now controlling 5 of the esteemed 6 Premier League clubs, as well as various other teams around the world. And at the same time, the world's premier talent is no longer concentrated exclusively in Europe and South America, as some of the biggest stars like Lionel Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo are choosing to play in emerging soccer markets. So let's unpack these two trends with our group. Scott, as a pioneer of the multi-club strategy, you represent actually the 3rd group to embark on such a journey, and the first to do so without a primary focus on football. What was the thesis behind your original approach, and how has it played out? Maybe talk to us about some of the synergies that you've captured across your portfolio.
So our approach was very different than the two before us, Man City and Red Bull platform. The Red Bull platform, start with that, it's pretty unique. They will play the same way. They will look for the same 6'1" center back that does X, Y, or Z, runs this way, not that way. They will play the same system, high press, high pressure, and they do that across the globe. So if you need a new center back in Germany, you know that you can go to Austria and get your center back, and it's going to look and feel the same for the coach. Again, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but that's where they want to be. Man City, I think, wants to have the most ubiquitous, widespread net for collecting talent. What's incredible, even to this day, this is a true stat, there's not one player that has come through the Man City network and ended up on the first team. So despite having the most teams and the largest footprint in the globe, they have not figured out a way to get a player up to Man City, which obviously is the crown jewel of the platform. I think David set out and said there's a natural group of synergies across a certain subset of countries for different reasons. For example, why own a team in Belgium? You own a team in Belgium because some of the rules about getting players into Europe are more flexible in Belgium than, say, the Netherlands. Why have a team in Portugal? Same thing, very flexible rules. There's a language issue that connects very well with Brazil. So Portugal has become a gateway for South American players, primarily from Brazil. So our portfolio, I think, reflects the view that there is a very, very good connectivity or potential connective tissue if you assemble the right portfolio of clubs where each could actually help each other. But I think that the bad articles or the press has lopped on to the fact that you're just moving players around like a chessboard. And that could not be farther from the truth. A player doesn't move to any team, especially in our system, unless he or she wants to, unless there's a real reason. And often players are surrounded by girlfriends or boyfriends or parents, and certainly 72 different agents. So when you see a player move, unlike the US, you don't trade a player. You cannot just move a player where you want. Players have to agree to go where they want. So we've tried to be very, very deliberate, respecting that ecosystem, and really set up something that tries to optimize a player's pathway, up or down, old or young. And I don't think we've gotten it right yet. I don't know if anybody has, given the examples I gave you. And so we strive every day to try to really figure that out. How do we set up a system for players to have the best careers for them? That's what we do every day. And hopefully you capture some of that across your portfolio of clubs because you're optimizing, in effect, where that player could have the most impact for them and for your club. That's the number one synergy. The other smaller synergies are data, coaching, scouting, health and wellness, which is a big one, but I'm sure others will talk about some of those. But that's the philosophy that drove our portfolio construction.
Got it. So Matt, you traded early stakes in U.S. baseball and hockey teams for international women's and men's teams. Take us behind the move across the pond to England, Ireland, and Monaco. Help us understand kind of how you got more excited about the international sports or teams.
I mean, I think so first of all, I think soccer has definitely gotten much more popular, particularly in the last 15 years, which is great, but it is the world sport. It just is. And when you go over there and you see the passion, it was incredibly clear to us that this was, the world was going to take, as things became more global, that you were going to get an embrace from in the U.S. of the sport. And so it was just a good way to sort of express and participate. I think look, we've paid a lot of tuition. It has not been like, it is not what you read in the papers. Hey, it's all amazing. Everything, everybody does great. You learn a lot of lessons. And the best thing I can tell you, though, about soccer, particularly at the professional level, is how much it's very similar to learning about business, right? Everybody says, oh, if I went to MIT, I'm thinking I want to graduate, I want to go work for Google. Great, it's an amazing company, but it's not perfect. And ultimately, a company, a team, is about the people that make it up. And if you don't manage the people, if you think you're playing FIFA or Football Manager, you're wrong. Like, you're going to get destroyed. And that is evident if you're looking at the Premier League table today. A team right next to us is spent $1 billion, and they're right next to us, and we didn't. So I think that is the part that really was intriguing to us about investing.
They made one good buy.
They did.
So the Messi effect, was talking about players, and other high-profile player moves to the U.S. have really captured our attention and our imagination. So Brian, how are you recruiting the best talent to the Revolution? Are you developing players through your academy, increasingly leveraging the global transfer market? Have you been able to spot, market inefficiencies?
Yeah, I think the fun thing about MLS is it's a very structured league, and we have a lot of rules that are designed to move the league forward, right? We're always moving forward as a league, but in a very structured, designed way. Within that structure, though, what we try to do is maximize every aspect of the structure that we're allowed to. So you can start off with your own academies, and how do we maximize that? Then we have this U22 initiative, which is investing in young players. How do we maximize that? You got this designated player rule, which is like you can spend what you want on 3 players. How do we maximize that? So our feeling is you need to be the best you can in all those areas. So then how do you do that? And it's an interesting inflection point for me, at least for the league, and what we've seen with our club over the last 5 years, which is how do we convince the best talent in the world for our league to come to our league? And what I mean by that is it's not just about money in soccer, especially in where we're finding a sweet spot right now in that sort of 19 to 24-year-old player who's thinking about their next move. And so how can we convince those players, come to MLS, you can increase your market value, you can increase your flexibility in terms of where you can go next, and you can do that through our league because our league is a great league for you. And that's where, at least for my club, we've had a lot of success in the last 5 years. And the interesting part for our club, which then translates frankly to the league if enough of our clubs are doing it, is that opens up better players that come to your league. And so, the example I'll use very specifically, and I just made a joke about it, we had a guy named Matt Turner. He was not much, Matt would tell you, coming out of college, developed under our club, and we sold him to a small club called Arsenal. But it put our club on the map in a way globally to say, like, wow, they sold this guy to Arsenal, look at that. So there's this young player coming out of Eastern Europe named Georgi Petrovic, who was being looked at in La Liga, who was being looked at in Ligue 1, and we were able to convince him and his agent, right? We talked about agents, that if you come to the New England Revolution and do well, you can go to any club in the world. And he was looking at sort of, do I go to a lower team in Spain as a goalkeeper, or do I go to this relatively good club in MLS? And what's best for my career? I think Georgie made the right move. I think Georgie would tell you he made the right move. But the interesting thing about some of these European leagues is, as a goalkeeper, if he went to a lower tier team in Spain, he was going to give up a lot of goals, right? Like they were going to lose to Real Madrid. They were going to lose whatever team that was. They were going to lose to Barcelona. When we thought, you come here, you can highlight your talents. Would I have told Georgie that he's going to get a transfer to Chelsea and become their starting goalkeeper in a couple of years? I would not have. But I think it really shows the potential of our league and the quality that's in our league. Now, we have a long way to go because we sold Georgie for less than $20 million. I would have told you Georgie was a $40 million player when we sold him. But MLS players aren't being bought for $40 million, right? So maybe the next time the Revolution have a goalkeeper that's performing as well as Georgie, we might get $40 million because people will look at the quality coming out. So I think from our league, the simple way to say it is there's a lot of market inefficiencies in soccer. And so I think MLS has a lower multiple on it right now from a player standpoint in the world market. But as we sell players back to Europe or other leagues and those players perform really well, people will look at like, hey, I spent 20 and I got a guy worth 40. I spent 5 and I got a guy worth 10. I spent 8 and I got a guy worth 20. Well, the next time we sell a player, it'll go for more. So I think where we're at in MLS right now is we're able to attract these players, we're able to develop them, and we're able to sell them. I think as those players go to Europe or other leagues and perform better than their transfer value, the value of players leaving MLS will go up, and then that'll allow us to get even better players in. So we're still going like that, but we have work to do on that front. But it's an exciting time because we are getting young Europeans leaving Europe to come to MLS to develop and get resold back to a better league in Europe than the league they were in Europe. And you wouldn't have seen that, I think, even 5 years ago happening. So I think it's a major inflection point for our league that you've got players from Europe actually choosing our league as a place to develop.
Scott, you represent another MLS team, so how would you respond?
So soccer is followed, football, soccer is followed by billions of people, not millions of people, right? 120 million people watch the Super Bowl, billions watch soccer, 1 billion will watch the World Cup. And MLS/the US is literally at a seminal moment. I mean, for those older people in the room like myself, we've heard soccer tipping point, soccer tipping point, soccer tipping point. But the best player in the world, recently, this is not he's older, but he's still the best player in the world, came to play in Miami. The World Cup will be the most watched sporting event in the history of the planet in 2026. You have other competitions I won't even talk about, and probably have the Women's World Cup hopefully coming, if Julie does her job right, in 2027. No pressure. I'm counting on you. But this is an incredible moment for this country and its relationship with soccer/football. And you can just look at the transfer market this window. I think MLS spent 150 million, 130 million on, I call it 15 players of top quality across the league, across the world, ages 18 to 37, which was the French goalkeeper who went to LAFC. So you've got never before stuff happening. And again, the best player in the world is playing here. And that's because he wanted to bring his family here. He could have made $200 million a year or more in Saudi Arabia, and he's doing just fine in Miami, but he's playing for MLS. And I just want to everyone take a step back. Like, that's pretty cool. Add the World Cup, and hopefully you have a nice cocktail for future success as well, as long as we don't muck it up. Ryan.
But talk about the impact Messi's had, just financially.
Right. So the financial impact, to Miami, multiples revenue. They actually were incredibly smart about setting up their sponsorship. They're building a new stadium. I think that for those in the country who have watched the games, the quality of the game seems to have all upticked. The stands are packed, the stadiums are packed. But yeah, from a business standpoint, without getting into the details, Miami has recouped their investment in Messi many times over, and the league, hopefully stands to benefit as well.
But I think one of the things we're all focused on is, like for my club, it's not come watch Lionel Messi play the game. It's people who are going to be drawn in or paying a little bit more attention to our league is like, look at how good this league is. Look at the quality of the players we have in the league. And the strategy we've taken as a league in the last 6-7 years is actually an investment in real talent and not just bringing in name players who you've heard of that might be past their prime. And Messi's a unicorn. He's not like any other player ever in the history of the world, so I don't talk about him in that regard. But we actually took, if you look at the player investment model in MLS over the last 8 years, we've shifted from a famous guys you've heard of that are at the tail end to a lot of money on young developing talent that are just really, really good players. And so if you watch an MLS game now, almost every team you watch, there are players that fans want to see play and are really impressed by the level of quality of play. And I think that's a fundamental shift that I've seen in my time with the league, is we've went from, we got to give people stars they've heard of, to no, if we put really great players on the field, they will become stars in our league. And that, I think, is, as someone who's a traditionalist who loves the sport, I think it's amazing to see that. And it's a real testimony to the U.S. soccer fan that they've shifted from someone who just knows this player that says, no, I can recognize great soccer. And we have so many soccer fans now in this country. That's a fundamental shift for our league, is people are showing up for good soccer now, not just for the name. They're learning the name because they see the good soccer.
Right. So Julie, how is Angel City playing this booming transfer market in women's soccer? And how do you see these markets differ for women versus men?
Well, I mean, look, the women market is nowhere near where the men's market is in the transfer market, but it's changed pretty drastically over the last 3 years. In 2022, the transfer market for all of women was something like 3.1 million. The transfer market for this quarter was 2.2 million, where Bay FC, which is a team in the National Women's Soccer League, a new expansion team this year with the Utah Royals, paid the highest transfer fee, which I think was $400,000 or $500,000 for a player. And you're starting to see the globalization of the players in the NWSL. And I think that's what's really fundamentally changing. I still believe we have the best players in the world. The U.S. Women's National Team is incredible. They're going to do exceptionally well at the Olympics. They're rebuilding. The young stars are getting the visibility and the experience that they need to go to the next level. But what you saw in the World Cup down in Sydney was that the rest of the world is catching up. The rest of the world is improving. And what we're starting to see is these players start to move between South America and Europe, Europe and the US, US into Europe, because they want different experiences. They want to play in different tournaments. But when you look at what the NWSL has to offer, we just closed a 4-year deal for $240 million. We'll be playing on CBS, ABC, ESPN, Amazon Prime, Ion Scripts. So we're going to get the visibility that these players need, and then it's the job of the clubs to really invest in these players to make them the next Messi from the household name, because that's incredibly important in our ability to monetize them. What LA does is we realize that our most valuable asset are the players. So we invest in every single one of our players, of our 26 players on our roster. We help them build their platform, build their brand. We evangelize them. Obviously, they do what they do on the pitch. But the more powerful, the more valuable they become, the more valuable the league becomes, the more valuable Angel City becomes.
Got it. Well, we can't talk about soccer, especially at a sports analytics conference, without talking about data and how teams are more and more using data to drive their investment decisions. So Matt, how are you leveraging analytics to value both teams and players? And how are you extending this data and these models to your on-field decision making?
So the thing is that I would tell you about soccer, which at a sports analytics conference, there's a difference between soccer, and I'll say soccer and hockey and other sports, in that soccer is a game of territory, okay? Where you possess the ball matters, okay? And this is not mine, I'm stealing this a bit, but like in basketball, if I gave you the opportunity to possess the ball 1 inch away from your own basket, right? Every team is gonna say, yes, I'll do that, okay? In soccer, kick the ball down the field. You don't want it, okay? That's a different way of doing things. The other thing is that, so as a result, because you have clear possession, you have discrete numbers, okay? Finite things. In baseball, pitcher pitches, batter swings, play ends. Football, play ends. Soccer and hockey are continuous. So who you play with, who you play against, and the state of the game matters incredibly. And so it's really hard to sort of say, okay, well, here's a number that this is really meaningful. This person is worth X. And I'll look at the Wolves this year, okay? So if you were a bettor, you might have bet against us. That would have been a mistake, okay? Our team is good. We're actually better than our points in the table, but officiating has not been kind to us this year. I'm going to get fined for that, by the way. Don't tweet that.
No recordings, no recordings, right?
Okay. And the reason is that our coach understands their players, right? Soccer is a team sport, so who plays with who? And that piece, and we brought up Chelsea. If you guys, we did play Chelsea 2 weeks ago. We thumped them. And principally because our players know exactly the role that they're supposed to play, not about building my individual stat. And so understanding that, so what you really need to do is build technology or data that supports your coach's philosophy, right? You support your manager. You don't try to outsmart the rest of the league, because then you're going to end up like Chelsea with a team of great individuals. That is actually the number one thing we have learned, is how to use data is to do its support. It is not the answer.
Okay. You know, when we were talking before, you mentioned a great story around the U.S. women's national team and how you leverage data there. Can you share that with this group?
Okay, I'll try to make this not too long. But because I came from hockey, we owned a team, and we were about to buy a center back. And our manager, this was at Bournemouth at the time, and our manager, Eddie Howe, was not particularly, well, he probably would not have gotten into MIT, okay? And he tells us that the cost of Nathan's going to be 6 or 7 million pounds. And it's not 6 or 7, it's 15 million pounds. And he says, okay. And I was like, okay, that's a lot of money. I mean, what if they had said $1 billion? He's like, because I need the player. And I went home, and Jenny, my business partner and wife and smart person, says, you don't know shit about, you don't know stuff about soccer. So what are you spending money on? So we end up having to build technology so that we can value players based on what the coach says. Fast forward 6 months after we had built this technology using all these stats, the stat company says, hey, would you be interested in talking to somebody else who had the same questions? It's US Soccer. We talked to them. We rebuilt their database because I would have appeared as M. Holsizer or Matt Holsizer or fan or coach or referee or player. So we rebuilt that. We got in a very good situation with them. And by the way, as US Soccer goes, who are the people who really want to embrace the data and the analytics? The women, right? They want to get better. So it was great. So the women are like, hey, can you help us? Can you help us? We're about to play for the World Cup in 2018. And they get a bunch of data from FIFA. And the data is a, in-game analytics. You could visualize it in theory. But it's garbage. And they call us. They say, we can't do anything with it. Can you help us? And I will call one of our data scientists working over the weekend, finds out that FIFA has incorrectly identified the referee as one of the players.
Oh, God.
And when we lifted that out, we totally understood everything about France, who was the favorite at the time. And so we mapped the entire game out. We visualized it. You knew exactly how far in yards the goalkeeper would kick the ball, who would head the ball to who, which alleys, right? Every set piece we knew exactly. And then we showed that to Jill, and who was the manager of the team, and the rest of the management. And sure enough, when we played France, it was a great moment watching us score off a set piece that we intercepted and went back the other way, and we got a very nice shout out. So that was a good moment.
So that's why we're here.
Hold on, I got to tell. He's telling funny stories. I got a funny story.
All right.
So those of you who I'm sure are on social media, have you seen the referee that the camera thinks is the ball?
Yes.
Because he's got a head like mine. So there's a tracking, an automatic tracking video of, I forget the league, but the referee looks like me, same barber, and it's a sunny day, and literally the camera just follows his head around the entire game. So I encourage you to check that out on YouTube. But anyway,
The power of visualization. So Brian, as a former management consultant, you had enlisted some consulting firms to help analyze your data and segment your fan base. What were some of the key insights that you gleaned from those efforts, and did they shape your strategy for the on-field product?
Yeah, and I think, background I think that's important is our superpower as a league is we actually work collectively as a league. So we're the only league in the world that says, okay, if we want to be better than the other leagues around the world, we can competitively act in a way to go after those leagues and to be better, to do things with our player profiles, whatever we want to do to compete more with the rest of the world. We compete a lot against each other within the US and in our league. So it's not meant we don't want to compete with each other here, but we can act collectively as a league. And so that's a great example of the project we did to say we want to understand the soccer fan in the United States. We want to know what are the things that they're interested in, how much soccer do they consume and why, and then what are the things they care about, and how does that overlap with both what we do today as a league, but what are the things that we can get better at as a league? And it was a very comprehensive study. It was an amazing piece of work. I think a lot of the owners in the room said, who own multiple teams in different sports, said it's probably, if not the most, one of the most comprehensive studies they've ever seen in sports. And it really helped shape our direction, not just on the field, but off the field. We'll talk about on the field, but some off-field things too. And I kind of hinted at it before. It really taught us that fans care about the quality of the product on the field. It sounds like a stupid thing, right? But it's not just about named guys. It's how do you get better? So we did a lot of spending initiatives, and I can bore you if you're an MIT sicko, and you know some of this, but like things like U22 initiatives and TAM and GAM and some of these initiatives we did, they were really structured around how do we improve, for instance, we need some better players at the top end, DPs. Okay, how do we make players 4 through 7 better? Okay, we'll do this thing called TAM that allows us to spend a little bit more in these spots. So it was a very directed piece to understand every league in the world that we compete with, how many world-class players, great players, really good players, serviceable players, et cetera, they have, And if we need more in this zone, what spending initiative can we design that allows our players, our GMs, our sporting directors to buy these guys, right? And so a lot of the structure in MLS, that I know people get frustrated with it, but it's designed to move our league forward in a very strategic way so that we can go from here to here, right? And when we get here, the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna go here. And then when we get there, we're gonna go, so the league has always moved forward, and we will continue to move forward. So that study really helped us think about how to improve the product on the field in a way that would make us more competitive. How do we look relative to, frankly, the Mexican league, which is one that is a real big comparison point for us. And frankly, to not think about Barcelona and Real Madrid and Bayern Munich, because we're not gonna compete with them today. Barcelona is better than any MLS team. I can say that confidently, and I'm not embarrassed, and it's not a shame, right?
You're not gonna get fined.
That's okay. That's not who we're competing with, though, right? And so one day we hope to compete with Barcelona, right? But we need to make steps to get there. And so we sort of ignored this sort of soccer purist, soccer snob person and said, we can't give them what they want anyway. It's actually a really small percent of the US soccer. They're really loud, but it's a really small part of the consumer base. So who cares what they're saying about us? Let's focus on the people that do love us or will love us. And what you've seen since then is dramatic growth in the league. Our average attendance is more than the NBA or the NHL. We're top 10 in the world in attendance. I mean, we have a really amazing league. We're really proud of what we built, and we're continuing to go forward. So it was a transformational study because it really helped us decide where to invest to grow our fan base here in the United States. And now we're sort of taking on the world a little bit with our Apple TV deal and some of the players we're bringing in. So, but you can be strategic in sports. You can think about the on-field product, especially in soccer where we're competing against the world. In sports, we're competing against the NHL and the NBA and those leagues. So I think it's okay to have strategy, really high-level strategy to help direct what you do on and off the field. And I think our league is a great example of it.
So what can entrepreneurs learn from global soccer? Julie, you're a veteran of tech and media startups. And in fact, Angel City is your second startup that you founded. How does building a soccer team from scratch feel like a tech startup? And how is it different? What lessons do you have for the entrepreneurs here in the room?
Yeah, well, in my case, I knew nothing about soccer when we started, which actually was a benefit. After our home opener, or in our inaugural year in 2022, we went to Europe. We saw the U.S. Women's National Team play England, and I got the chance to see Chelsea play at their home match at Kings Meadow. And I was so glad I didn't see that experience before I built Angel City, because they were so focused on the soccer. It's whistle to whistle, it's 90 minutes. There's no experience, right? And so what was great about building Angel City was saying, okay, we know we need to put 11 players on the pitch, but we also know that Los Angeles is the sports capital of the world, and that there are 11 professional sports teams in USC and UCLA, and the beach, and the mountains. So how are we gonna create an entertaining experience that's gonna wanna make people come, and also care about our team more than just the wins and losses? But how do we create a real connection? Because sport, at the end of the day, is really about creating community and creating a sense of belonging, and it's really about a gathering place where people with like interests can come. And we got the benefit that Utah didn't get, of about 18 months of a runway to sort of build that community. And so we looked at football from the lens of what were our two big goals. Our first goal with Angel City was to drive to equity, truly. Angel City came out of Natalie Portman's work in Hollywood during the Me Too movement, her and Kara's work with Time's Up and the U.S. Women's National Team as they embarking on U.S. soccer. So the goal was, how do we use sport to bend the curve towards equity? And yes, that's pay equity, but that's gender equity, that's visibility. So that was one of the things we wanted to accomplish. And the second thing was, how do we do that and be profitable? Because most sports teams in the world aren't profitable. If we could both be profitable and lead with purpose and have impact in our community, we could actually change the narrative, not only around women's sports, but sports more generally, that you can build it differently. And we had to do all of that within Los Angeles, where it's really hard to get people to change their behavior. And so as an entrepreneur, when you go to build something, you look at what is best that's already come before you. So it's like, what's the best football club in the world? One could argue it's Barcelona. because they're a global brand. And when you go under the hood at Barcelona, you realize that they're not just a football club. They're a netball club, and they're a basketball club, and they have a sports innovation lab. But because they're this global brand, it gave them permission to launch other products and services. You talked about City Football Group, right? They're incredible at developing players. Like, they would say they're talent development before they're football clubs, right? You could say that they're a platform that knows how to commercialize their sponsors and push it across their multiple soccer clubs. And I was like, well, I get that. I want to be a platform that stands for equity and impact, that gives me the ability to launch other products and services because people care about my brand, which stands for equity. That's how we thought about Angel City. So football was part of it, but we don't define success only by wins. We define success by the impact we have in our community, on our team, on women's football, and then on the global sport of women's football. And so as an entrepreneur, it was take what's best from the rest and build something unique and special in Los Angeles. And that means our own identity that's led by our crest, that is versatile and timeless, and authentic and unique. So at the end of the day, no one else can have a crest that's an angel because it's ours, right? And build it in such a modular way that it can be jewelry, or it can be on a t-shirt, or it can be a football crest that you wear of your heart every time you play on Saturday night. And so we just approach sports differently from an impact perspective, from a purpose perspective, from a brand perspective, because we knew that, like global brands, if I'm a global brand, I can drive attention awareness for what I care about, which is purpose and equity. I can drive revenue because I have everybody paying attention, and with that revenue, I can put it into impact. And so it was approaching it differently, but recognizing the value that you can have beyond the sport.
Got it. Scott?
Yeah, look, shout out to everything you've done. They have truly done it better than anybody else in women's football. So it's hard to follow that. I would say a couple things. First, we all know the TAM, which is a big VC thing, right? The massive TAM in football, soccer. So you got the TAM. The unique thing about soccer is I don't think there's anything else maybe in the world where you can connect with every person in a community, every investor, and politicians. Mm-hmm. Okay, think about global football. It connects all three. That's unique. Okay, usually you have a problem with one of those subsets. So as far as startups and entrepreneurs, you have a really good cocktail to start with, right? Nobody's done the branding better than Angel City, but we've done, and we're going to build our brand one hoodie at a time that I'm wearing today. But our view is we're in a unique community. Let's understand that community, same as you. Obviously, Utah is very different than LA. One of the unique things about Utah that we had to tap into, the highest percentage of participation in youth soccer in the United States. That's a fact, percentage-wise. And it's equally split boys and girls. So our approach, as trying to be an entrepreneur, but really understanding the community, we have the benefit of all the TAM and all the tailwinds, and what is going to be unique about our community. Same thing, very different place, LA and Utah, and that's what we're building, sort of one day at a time. As we start, our initial game will be March 16th, as we start our first season in Utah, so we're really excited about that.
I want to switch to last year's conference. You know, Nate Silver mentioned that he was surprised that the MLS has not become as big as the other Big Four sports. Matt, do you agree? What needs to happen for the U.S. to have a Big Five when it comes to professional leagues?
So I think that's an interesting comment from Nate. I'd say a couple things. So first of all, I'll start with the fact that the NWSL it's the Premier League, it's La Liga, it's Liga, all in one. Like, they are the best league. It's not close. And that piece we should be really proud of as a country because, I mean, it's amazing. They're the leaders in football. So I think there is an adoption of that in this country. I think MLS is different. It was a little bit, it's had a bunch of stops and starts, candidly, since we were younger when they had the NASL and the New York Cosmos. For people who are born before 2000 might remember that name. I mean, it's probably before that even, gosh. So we've had a bunch of stops and starts in men's soccer here. I think they have gotten a bunch of things right. The one thing I I'm going to be careful what I say, but I think the one thing that's a little bit different is the not having promotion and relegation. It's a little presumptuous of us as a country to think that we are going to change the way the rest of the world operates. I understand it because as a country, everything else is a league, and if you invest in a team, you don't want that team to go down. But I think some of it is that.
But I would say to counter that, right? No, but to counter that is when I talked about our league superpower, right? Our owners can collectively invest in growing our league and making it a better league because they know they're going to be in the league. And so MLS training facilities are the best training facilities in the world. In all of global soccer, outside of a few teams, I'd invest even more. Why? Because my owner can spend $35 million on a training facility knowing that he's going to have an MLS team in 10 years. And so when you look at the stadium development around the world, you take out, I don't know, 5 to 10 stadiums around the world, and the MLS stadiums that are being built are better than almost any stadium in Europe for its size. And the reason why that MLS owners and teams are able to invest in our league and grow our league is because they don't have promotion relegation. Now, will it happen one day in the future? Maybe. But the strength of our league is because we don't have promotion relegation, we can actually work collectively to invest, knowing that we can move the whole league forward as one. So I understand fans and why they're like, pro, but our ability to grow our league from where it is and now jump over many European leagues, and we are a way better league than a lot of European leagues now, is because we have that ability to invest knowing that we're going to have a league and you're going to be in that league. So I understand the competitive nature of that side of it, but I think from the boring financial side, like no one's loaning an MLS team $500 million to build a stadium if you're like, oh, by the way, my business model may completely fall apart next year if we have a bad team, right? So I do think there's that side of it, which is not exciting for fans, but I think it's an important thing to note that it does allow us to have strength and to grow.
I know we're going to Q&A, but I agree with everything you said. I think there's a benefit to pro-rel, and that's simply making every match count, right? That's the advantage. I think the flip side is everything you just said, and the second flip side is just quality. The NWSL, I agree, best league in the world, and people are going to watch it because the quality, if you want to watch women's soccer, you're going to look at every game, and it's going to be a very, very high quality. When the world starts watching MLS, given the quality changes, I think that will win over the fact that there's no pro-rel. But MLS has to make every match count, and I think that's what they're working towards, both quality-wise and also what is it that's going to attract people when XYZ team's playing ABC team if they're both towards the bottom of the table? What is it? So it's got to be quality, because I think that's the other side of your discussion.
Great. So I'm going to go to questions from the audience. Actually, the first question was about relegation, so I'm going to skip to, I think this one, maybe Julie, you could hit this one. How do you see the WSL coexisting with the NWSL? With it being on the same yearly path as internationally, soccer will this be more effective for them to draw players?
Yeah, the WSL is really exciting. It's another Division I league that's entering America starting next summer. They have a couple differences to the NWSL. Specifically, their calendar is the same as European. They don't have a salary cap. And they're starting with, I think, 8 teams. Look, what it does is it proves that there is a lot of incredible talent here in the U.S. We only have, as of today, 14 teams in the NWSL, growing to 16 by 2026, and there's still more talent than the number of teams that we need. So it's incredible to see the WSL starting. I think it's going to create additional competition for players. I think it's going to drive up the quality of the games. I think it's going to help us continue to build attention and awareness for women's football in the U.S. because you'll have more opportunities to watch. They are in different smaller markets, which is also great because, again, it creates that fandom and that excitement. I think right now that the NWSL has a number of advantages, and partially because we've been in this for 12 years now. But like I mentioned, we have a $240 million 4-year deal. You'll be able to turn on CBS, ABC, Amazon, and be able to see our games. I think that's critically important. The commercial support that we have from our partners within the NWSL is really strong between Ally and Google, who we just announced. The way that they're investing in the league, again, to build the attention and awareness for these players in this league is something that has really been unparalleled, even within the NWSL since we joined, which was its 8th season. If you look across the NWSL, we have the best players in the world. We have the U.S. Women's National Team players. As I said, we are recruiting players from international markets at an exceptionally fast pace. We may have a salary cap, but that is growing year over year. It just grew to $2.75 million. And we're seeing players make real money in the NWSL. Mallory Swanson is now the highest paid player. She plays for Chicago Red Stars. It was a $2 million deal. It's a 4-year deal with an option for a 5th year. So I think the idea that we're willing to play players, we're willing to market players, they're playing in the top markets in the world, we have the best competition today, is something that's going to keep the NWSL, I think, one step ahead for a while.
Got it. Another question, I'll leave this open up to the group. How can teams with limited funds compete against billionaire-backed clubs?
Data.
They can't. That's why I love MLS. So, I mean, you can be a small club in the Premier League or La Liga. Like, is a small club in La Liga ever going to win the La Liga, ever? Who would bet on a club other than 4 clubs in La Liga ever winning La Liga in your lifetime? Who would make that bet?
So,
You would? Okay.
So, you know, the MLS is built on competitive equity, competitive balance. And if you like that, and you're a fan of the NFL, you're a fan of the NBA, I mean, what are the mechanisms that the NFL and NBA use every year to reset? They have a draft. And the first pick in the draft, whether you go to San Antonio or you go to Kansas City as a quarterback, resets competitive balance. Soccer doesn't have that, okay, in the world, right? Real Madrid and Barcelona are going to be 2 of the 3 or 4 best teams. Every once in a while, you'll have an outlier. You'll have a Leicester City win the Premier League. Whether that's data, whether that's luck, whether that's coaching, whether that's just, you know, biorhythms or horoscopes. You know, Fish That Saved Pittsburgh, one of my favorite movies. Only Daryl knows that one. You can't. I agree with you. If it depends on what you want, and I think that's a challenge the Premier League, you know, is trying to deal with right now with financial fair play. But it seems like at the end of the day, if you're a fan, you do want to have hope, and hope is what makes sports great. And last comment is, why is soccer so great? Because it has hope. Think of another sport, maybe other than hockey, where you can win a game without a shot. That's what we did 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Our men's team won a game against Seattle without a shot. Not a shot on goal, a shot. We didn't attempt a shot, but we managed to see the game to penalty kicks and won. Where else can you outplay a team all game and lose because of a handball or a red card? It's soccer. That's what makes the game beautiful. So yes, I agree. You can't compete. There are exceptions, and it really depends on what you want. And I think it is a much better proposition to have competitive balance in some way at the end of the day.
Got it. There's a question in here about if you're an MBA interested in sports investing, what courses should you take?
How to find money at an ATM.
Matt?
So that's a good question. I'm going to say this. We had a dinner with a famous MBA professor at NYU a couple weeks ago, and I was saying, if you really want to learn about business, there's some business schools that go and teach you, and they're going to teach you specific skills. How to read a balance sheet, financial statements, okay, understanding how logistics work, okay, helpful. And one of the professors who's teaching at Ross was saying, I'm going to take students up and I'm going to hike Kilimanjaro with them. He goes on hikes with them, and they're going to find out what their calling is. This was one of the things. And I said, we're kind of a customer on our sports teams and in our business of this product. Okay, and this idea of going up to Kilimanjaro, like, I'm glad people will find it themselves. I don't know how it helps me, because the thing that would help me, okay, as an owner, okay, of a business and a sports team is if you make them hike up and they have to carry a canoe. And he was like, what? I was like, because you have to work together. Okay, and so the courses you want to take are those courses that are going to force you to work with your classmates. Those are your peers. And if you can't work with other people, you will not succeed in anything, not just sports.
Yeah. So we've just time for one final question. So I'm going to take the prerogative and ask each of our panelists before we wrap. If you could invest in any soccer club, where would you maximize your ROI and why? So why don't I start with Scott and we'll go down the line.
I think that the most exciting soccer clubs are those that garner eyeballs and fans globally. And so those brands, whether that's a Liverpool or Barcelona or Real Madrid, those are iconic brands that, you know, have 1 billion followers, 500 million followers. And I think if you look out over time, I think that'll be one of the most exciting ROI strategies, because you just basically have, you know, you have the world watching your club.
Okay. So you're buying the brand.
I am buying, you got to buy brand, whether it's Angel City or anything else. You're buying brand, and that therefore you're buying an opportunity to really speak to people and be part of, you know, part of that ecosystem.
Julie?
I don't know how many of you were in the panel before this, but it was about sports ownership, and the owners were talking about the value of sports teams, and specifically men's sports team, and how it's been on this incredible linear curve, and they were talking about how they don't think it's sustainable, right? So if I'm going to invest, I want to invest at the bottom of the curve and know it's going up. And right now, that's women's football. There's no question it's women's football. And then when you look at women's football, you need a league that's going to support that growth, right? And that, again, takes you to the NWSL, and then you just need to go to the best team in the league, and, well, that would be Angel City.
Angel City. Yeah, there you go. Matt?
I'm going to agree with her. I think that's the thing. The U.S. is in the lead. There's an autocorrelation that goes on in terms of the U.S. and then the rest of the world, whether that's AI. Okay, great, we've got our chips, and now the rest of the world wants to do that. The same thing in sports. We are leading, and that lead in particular is being demonstrated by NWSL and Angel City specifically. And the world is going to move in that way. They're just a little bit behind. So more women are going to start playing soccer internationally than ever have before. It is the world sport. They're going to do it. The world is becoming more, maybe too slowly, but it is trying to equalize. And you're going to see women participate, and they're going to care about watching their idols or stars. And where are those stars playing? They're playing in the NWSL. So that is where I think, in terms of brand, if you have that as your audience, that's a really, really valuable, really valuable spot.
Brian, you get the last word.
I'll cop out a little bit because I agree. I think NWSL and women's sports right now is a place where you get the most financial ROI going forward. I do think there's a second component. I would say if somehow someone figures out how to unlock sort of the global revenue streams for some of the big clubs, a Barcelona or Madrid, I don't think they're actually achieving maximum value for how big their brands are globally. And given the imbalance in their league that will always exist, frankly, they're always going to be a world superpower in sports. So if you can unlock global revenue, I think there's a lot of upside in those teams. But I think most importantly, too, is what's important to you. Is it a social ROI you're looking at? Is it a pure financial ROI you're looking for? Most people who buy sort of lower division clubs, whether that's soccer or other sports, are doing it because there's some sort of personal connection to the city or the town. So, I don't know, I have a friend from Iowa. So if you're going to buy a team or start a team in Des Moines, Iowa, you're probably not doing it for a financial ROI. It's because you want to do something great for your community. So I do think it depends what you're looking for. But I think I go NWSL for a sort of pure financial play.
Great. Well, let's give our esteemed panel a round of applause. Thank you.